Google New York doing a project that we call Trendspotting. I lead this project, and basically, we're using Google data to identify trends and behaviors in the food category. And you might be thinking, what does Google know about trends, especially when it comes to food? You guys are the food experts. We're tech. We're search. What does that have to do with food? Well, we might not be the experts, but our users are the experts, and they know exactly what they want. And every day, we have millions of users going on Google search all over the world, telling us what they're looking for, what they're interested in, what they want to eat. And so we take all of these searches in the food category, and we look at the different patterns. So we take away seasonality to account for any holiday risers, so we know it's not just because of the holidays or seasonality. And then we look at how it's growing, so speed, rate of speed, and year-over-year growth. And in doing that, we're able to categorize them into 6 different trends. So the risers versus decliners, and then the safe bets versus the more risky trends that could be just fads. And by understanding and using data to quantify a trend and a behavior, you can understand what that means for your business. So is it something that you want to, invest long term, or is it something that, might just be a quick fad and you might want to stay away from it, or is it declining and you might just want to completely pull back from that trend? So you might think you know a lot of trends, and I'm sure you do. Trends, very interesting area, but as you are the experts in the industry, let's see how data can actually help when it comes to trends. So we're going to start off with a bit of a game today to test your expertise. This is a game we call in or out. And I can't really see you, but I need everyone to raise your hand when you think something's in, and we'll see if you're right. So we'll start off with this one. I'm not even going to try to pronounce it, but gluten-free pie versus hot dogs. So raise your hand if you think gluten-free pie is in. All right. Raise your hand if you think hot dogs are in. Okay. All right. Let's see. So that's kind of how data can help you. Sometimes, I know gluten-free has been really big overall. We actually saw this in the US as well. Gluten-free is a big trend, but it's also kind of declining. People are realizing that they might not actually be allergic to gluten anymore. And, hot dogs are good. What about this one? Cake pops or brownies? Raise your hand if you think cake pops are in. All right. What about brownies? All right. You guys got that one. So yes, cake pops, not so in anymore. That was a quick fad. But brownies, surprisingly really big in France. I was excited to see that. That's something that I love, but we just don't have as much of as a trend in the US. But still, really cool to see how big brownies are in France. But honestly, don't worry. I know you're seeing a lot of American foods now trending, but French cuisine is also trending all over the world as well. So surprisingly, when we look at who's searching for French cuisine, Japan is number 1. That was surprising to me. I don't know how you feel about that. Also seeing it in Australia, the US, UK, Canada. So yes, French cuisine is making its rounds as well. It's not just American food coming to France. It's an overall global trend that we're seeing. And when we talk about these global trends, we recently did a report at Google understanding food behavior in the US. But while we found these themes specifically for the US, we're also seeing actually a lot of overlap with France as well. So when we see functional foods, we're talking about foods, ingredients that come with benefits. And we're seeing that's huge in France as well with turmeric, which they refer to as curcumine, as well as kefir, making strides in France as well. Traveling through taste, so as we saw, American food in France, whereas in US, it's actually a lot more Asian cuisines and Mexican foods coming in. Experimenting with pork, so pork and pasta are also trending in France. And then we're seeing bite-sized snacks, so these are all the mini foods, so everything in small portions. beyond just understanding what's trending overall, we're trying to get better at data and understanding how data can really tell us more about the behavior. And there's so much data to play around with. So what we're doing is we're looking at basically time of day or day of week data to understand what's the behavior with these specific food trends. So when we look at turmeric, for example, we are seeing, and this actually applied to a lot of functional foods and even in France as well, we are seeing that people are starting off the week really strong. So every Monday, every beginning of the week, everyone's going in and they're like, I'm gonna be healthy today. Today's my day. And then as the week goes on, the motivation, phases out a bit. They're not as interested in being healthy or as productive. And by the weekend or the Friday, it's all about, pork shoulder and let's get that cake, that mud cake. And when we look at trends like traveling through taste, we're seeing that this is having a huge impact on actual content and what people are watching on YouTube. So we're seeing that there's a lot of content around global foods, but not just recipes and not just understanding how to make it or why it's done a certain way, but more of like an entertainment aspect to it. Some parodies, some music videos, lots of interesting stuff going on, but it's a lot around explaining cultures and telling them more from an entertaining, silly perspective. But it's all based on food, and it shows how big of a centerpiece food really is when it comes to culture. One of my favorite examples is also this idea of customization is key. So what we are looking at with data is understanding how people are searching for certain trends. So when it came to the mug cake, which is also known as, I think, a bowl cake in France, this is a big trend that we are seeing. And we are seeing that people were searching along different flavors for the mug cake. Yes, that's normal. Everyone has their favorite flavor, vanilla, chocolate. We can fight it out. But the question is also, which dietary restriction is now most important to you? So people aren't just looking for vanilla or chocolate, but they're also looking for vegan, they're looking for gluten-free, they're looking for keto, which is more of a high-fat diet, and then paleo, which is more of a prehistoric type of diet. So understanding that, now people aren't just sitting at the dinner table, everyone having the same meal. Everyone's actually having their own portion size with their own dietary needs. So it comes with a different flavor as well as their own diet restriction. And that really, really explains a huge new behavior in the way people are eating. So it's not just portion control. They're not just eating because, they want to control themselves, but they're also trying to find their favorite flavor and their favorite or their needs according to what they think their body requires. So how are brands tapping into these behaviors? We find that, every time a new trend comes along, yes, a trend might show new behaviors, it might show what's going on, where people are heading, but the question is, how can a brand actually tap into this? So as I was saying before, some trends are a lot more long-term, they're more safe, whereas other trends can be just quick fads. And if you use data, you can actually identify if a trend is growing slowly or if it's just taking off really quickly, and that could actually change the way you tap into it as a business. So the first example that we'll take you through is product innovation. If a trend is really big and you can see that it's growing over time, so something like turmeric, which started off as a rising star but became more of a sustained riser, brands can understand that they can create new products around it. So we're actually seeing a lot of brands tapping into this global food trend. For example, Lay's came out with the Indian tikka masala chips. So now chips that contain turmeric and all these different Indian flavors to really capitalize off of this new trend. But for brands that might not want to invest too much, another trick is actually finding products that already include these ingredients. So funny enough, something like mustard already contains turmeric in it. So what brands can do is just actually create messaging around it. So just changing the bottle to say, includes turmeric, even though it's something that already was included, or even just having the product messaging on the signs saying that it has turmeric in it. So we've seen a lot of brands do stuff around that. And last but not least, really understanding different content that can be created around it. So if consumers are searching now for mini products, mini foods, it's understanding what kind of content can you as a brand provide. So creating new videos, new recipes around these different behaviors. So as we were saying before, stuff around turmeric, other global foods, or maybe it's the mini foods, and maybe it's around hot dogs, stuff like that. We have a ton more content for you if you're interested in checking it out yourself. So we have trends.google.com, which is actually a platform where you can test out your hypotheses and see the data for itself, see how something is rising, see how something is declining. You can do it across every market. So you can see for France, you can see for all local markets as well across the world. We also have thinkwithgoogle.com as well as thinkwithgoogle.fr. And this will be a platform where we host all of our reports. So you can find our food trends report as well as other trends reports that we've created. And last but not least, if you have any specific questions, you can also reach out to foodtrendsreport@google.com. Thank you. Merci.